come to Ifield today to have a look round because there's going to be a massive development just at the back of it. Ifield's near Crawley. Crawley is already a massive conurbation that's been growing since, well, whenever it was originally built as a new town some time ago. And I thought I'd come to Ifield because it's a lovely rural village, or was, and it's under threat. So I wanted to have a look round, starting at the pub, heading to the church, and then into the land to the west, which is under threat. When you're standing in the old village, the original ancient village of Ifield, well before Crawley was even a dream, that possibly dates back even to Saxon times. It's mentioned in the Domesday Book, I understand. When you stand here, you almost lose the sense that you're near this massive urban sprawl that is Crawley. And in fact, as soon as you get to the church, you completely forget that. But the old pub, the vernacular of the Sussex vernacular of the hung-tiled cottages here, the beautiful flowers, and the peace, the serenity, and the birds chirping as I film here, it is an absolute haven. And I'm filming early in the morning before the village bustle has got going. Well, I've joined up with Cathy Durant now, who is the treasurer of the Save the West of Ifield support group committee.
Yes.
And it's very nice to meet you, Cathy.
Good to meet you.
Lovely to see you. And you brought me here because you're very concerned, obviously, about the development that I've been speaking of.
Yes.
And we're in the heart of a part of Ifield, well, the heart of Ifield, part of the Crawley and this surround that I guess a lot of people wouldn't know about.
No, this is the real heart of Ifield Village Conservation Area. Ifield was actually mentioned in the Domesday Book, so back in 1086, is when it was mentioned as Ifelt, which means you field. We actually think it was probably settled before that, so it was probably inhabited for a long time before we can even imagine. There's a yew tree in the churchyard over there, which is believed to be over 1,000 years old.
So yew tree as in yew field, as
yes,
in a field of yew
yes,
trees?
Yes, indeed. So has strong Druid connections, so we really don't know how long this area was inhabited for. It was never a nuclear village, it was always very rural, so
right.
Whilst you had the pub and a couple of dwellings, really we had a rural fringe with footpaths that led to lots of local villages, so people would travel to and from the villages, to and from the mill, to the pubs, to the shops, and back to their homes.
Absolutely fascinating landscape here. We're standing outside the Plough Inn. The original part of the pub dates back to 1600s.
That's right, yes.
Which is actually the building adjacent to it.
Correct, yeah.
And this one is?
Early 1900s.
1900s.
Yeah.
This whole area is going to be impacted dramatically by the vast number of houses that they're planning on building, isn't it?
That's right. Whilst the actual village itself will be retained, the nature of the village is very dependent on the rural fringe and the views from that. It's widely used by local people, dog walkers, for recreation purposes, and has a lot of history, ancient woodlands, biodiversity, which would all be ruined by the building of 10,000 houses potentially.
And this whole area has, over the last 20, 30 years, already seen massive amount of development.
Absolutely. I mean, when Crawley was built, it was designed as a new town that had strict borders to be a town in the countryside. Well, what we see now is the development of the airport. We've got the whole town surrounded, apart from this one rural fringe, by concrete and motorways. So this is the last remaining link to the countryside. And in fact, when we're looking at the development of potentially another 10,000 houses, we're talking about another 24,000 people, which is a quarter again the population of Crawley.
St Margaret's Church at Ifield. Dates back to the 13th century, I understand. The tower, though, is more recent, and possibly there was a Saxon settlement here because, as mentioned before, the village goes back to the Domesday, so there probably was a Saxon church on this very spot. And round the corner there is a very ancient yew tree, and I'm going to see if I can find that before I venture off out into the water meadow and then a little to the west, where 10,000 houses have been proposed to be built, which will basically then encircle this village, this little lung of a village that's bringing a bit of tradition, a bit of life and countryside into the conurbation. And if that happens, well, it's just going to change and devastate this whole wonderful area. Literally in front of us, we get into the countryside.
Yeah, exactly that, and it's this very feature that gives the conservation of area of Ifield its rural feel. And yes. Whilst this area in itself won't be affected, just over there we're going to have loads and loads of houses. It's just going to change the whole nature of the area.
Yes. So, of course, one thing that people watching this who are not connected and not in the area will always say, well, what about NIMBYism? What about not in my backyard?
Yeah.
And how do you answer that?
I answer that, yeah, we do need houses.
Yes.
We do need houses in this country and in this area, but what we need are truly affordable social houses, not the sort of houses that are going to be built on this development. What we see quite often with the local developments is that whilst social housing is promised, it isn't delivered in the numbers that the developers promise, and we end up with housing that's unaffordable to the community. A lot of the need for the 10,000 houses was predicated on the fact that Gatwick Airport is going to expand. Well, that was pre-COVID. The figures used to set the numbers for the housing in this area are based on old ONS data, which has actually gone out of date.
Right.
And the later ONS reports showed lower population growth. Moreover, that since COVID, there's been an impact on the population in the area and on the housing in the airport. So not only do we not see as many jobs needed at the airport to show the need for 10,000 houses, but there's a mismatch between the actual jobs that are going to be created, the amount of automisation that's going to be at Gatwick Airport, and the houses that are going to be delivered. So yes, please build the houses that people need, but the houses that people need and in the right place.
Yes.
Not on a floodplain, not where the infrastructure cannot cope with it.
Found it. Here it is. It's a beast of a tree. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, there's a number of other yew trees around here, and I gather that Ifield originally means a field of yew trees. So you can see how it got its name. Just wandering through and around this remarkable tree, you can get an idea of the massive girth here. Very ancient. If only it could tell us stories of the rural setting, the millennia of different people that come and have gone, visiting the church, tilling the fields, the marriages, the births, the deaths and all of that. A tree like this would have witnessed so much life. Fascinating.
And the fields that are going to be built on are agricultural. We are going to be losing fields that previously had a sustainable cattle development on them.
Yes.
We are going to be using agricultural fields right the way through Ifield, in fact the last farmed area in Crawley, right through to Lambsgreen and Fairgate to the A264. So not only are we losing the agriculture in this area, but we're increasing our reliance on having to import our food from other areas.
Which, as we record this, there's the problems with Russia and Ukraine, which just goes to show when you rely on third parties all the time, that it can, as we're just about to go into, a massive cost increase.
That's right, and adds to our carbon
Exactly.
our carbon targets.
So it would really impact the village, these houses, with the extra, not just the people and the houses, but the whole infrastructure and the busyness.
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing 24,000 more people potentially, which means 14,000 more cars on the area, onto roads that really cannot take them. We already, as most areas do, have so much trouble getting doctors and dentist appointments. Another 24,000 people adding to that is going to be frankly unsustainable.
Yes.
There's no plans to build the doctors on the new development, so how are these people going to be catered for? Yes, schools are going to be delivered, but they're going to be delivered at some point.
Right.
So that's going to have an impact on the local schools in the area.
Yes.
So yeah, really it's going to overstretch Crawley's infrastructure, but we're not getting the council tax. It's being built on Horsham land, so the council tax is going to Horsham.
Oh, right.
So we're not even going to have the compensation for it.
Oh gosh. It is beyond the church walls I want to take you now, for this is where the development is. We'll go into the water meadow and then onto some agricultural land which is going to be obliterated for new builds. Sadly, everywhere you go now, as we go west from the church, you see these signs saying private land. You're reminded that Homes England, a division of the government or a department that's associated with the government, has purchased this land ready to be built on, as the name suggests, Homes England. But first we're going to go through the water meadow, which there's no plans initially to build on. This is ancient land, and it floods, so you'd be ill-advised to build on this. Spring is definitely in the air now, which is absolutely wonderful. After our wet and drizzly, miserable winter, we haven't even had the cold and crisp mornings. And it's lovely to see the buds beginning to come and form on the trees, and some of the blackthorn blossom also just springing out everywhere. And so this area clearly is then a bit of a haven for this side of Crawley, because people can come here, get out into the countryside very easily and walk their dogs. There are footpaths even on this private land, and that's going to be very much impacted when the housing development not only is here, but the whole sort of 20 years or so as it takes place. 10,000 houses is a lot and takes a lot of time to construct.
My understanding is that there is an aspiration that people will be able to get wherever they need to within the estate within 15 minutes by cycle or walking. There's going to be cycle paths put in along the side of the dual carriageway according to the plans, and footpaths. But that's all very well if you want to stay within the estate. If you want to cycle off the estate, you've then got to join up with roads outside that don't have cycle paths. And in fact, a lot of them are quite dangerous in that they're narrow, they're windy, and cars do speed down them.
And then we come out into where the building and the development is going to take place. These vast fields here, agricultural fields, in which there are some crops in them, looking northwards there. Now, just ahead of me and beyond the trees in front is Gatwick Airport, about a mile or two just up that way. So it's not only going to have the noise of the traffic, but of course you've got the noise of the aeroplanes, in which anybody living in those new houses are going to be impacted themselves by. And then behind me we already see where a whole bunch of new builds are that are starting to come up from the Horsham area, and eventually all of this will join up, and you can't help feeling that this is the last piece of the jigsaw that will join Crawley to Horsham together, and there'll be nothing in between.
We are very blessed within this area to have a big diversity of the wildlife that's here. We have around, I believe, 50 species of birds that have been recorded, including skylarks, kingfishers. We have badgers, we have deer, rabbits, but we have a number of quite rare species. There are great crested newts that have been found within the golf club, which of course is under threat, and we in this area have some very old blackthorn hedgerows which are the habitat of a rare butterfly called the brown hairstreak, and Sussex Wildlife Trust have only recently found evidence of the brown hairstreak living within those hedgerows, which will be destroyed, so their habitat will be gone. Also, across in Ifield Wood, which is ancient woodland just across the way there have been found some quite rare Bechstein bats, which have been recorded living in Ifield Wood and known to forage within this area.
I don't know what the acreage of the area is that's going to be completely destroyed by these new houses, but I can tell you also there's going to be a dual carriageway, I understand, that will sweep through all of this and curve round the west side, coming up from Horsham, curving round the west side up towards Gatwick Airport. However, I gather that it can't fully go up to Gatwick Airport because there's the potential expansion of another runway, from what I understand, which may halt it, which means it'll go from a dual carriageway west of Crawley, round the side of Ifield, through the housing estate. So if you want to buy a house next to a dual carriageway, good luck to you there then. And then it'll come down back into the small roads, so there'll be a huge bottleneck back there. Well, I've come back to the van. The wind has got up a bit, and I really urge people to have a look at the website and the Facebook page. I'll put all the links down in the description so you can check it out. It's just, for me, it's just a shame that this is happening again and again and again in West Sussex. And if we don't do something about it soon, there won't be a West Sussex, there won't be a countryside to look forward to and to enjoy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.